reality, a truth about your vote. Newsmax is on all major cable systems. Check your guide. Or watch Newsmax on most streaming systems or your smart TV. And download the free Newsmax app on your phone and start watching now. Newsmax is your trusted news source. Tune in today.
Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
Broadcasting from the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor David Gronowski. So glad to be with you live again for another exciting journey together. We're going to look at headlines guided by personhood, not groupthink, not tribalism, and let's just hit the ground running. There's so many stories I want to get to today, and just comments that we see on social media. Sometimes you can get more information out of a social media post than you can these elaborate articles that come up with a lot of reasons to use a lot of words to say very little. And so although you can say the discourse has been degraded by platforms like Twitter and Facebook and so forth, going hard on the paint for, big pharma, big banks, big war machine, big regime change chaos all over the globe. Nevertheless, the net benefit is that a lot of folks can provide a lot of challenges to the waning power of the 20th century media, which continues to plummet in its ratings, not only online and its websites, but also on its television shows. As we've mentioned to you before, Joe Rogan gets more ratings and more viewers than anybody on the nightly newscasts by a lot, and yet they haven't gotten the memo yet. If you heard the ABC News segment before this show on radio, you know that they're just going along. They're saying Nancy Pelosi, she's going to get to the bottom of that horrible attempt to overthrow the election. They just use the same language over and over again to try to program people into hateful, negative, divisive frameworks. When they were having folks trying to, contest the 2016 election, nobody in the stupid hack media outlets like ABC and NBC said that was an attempt to, overthrow the election or attack democracy. They didn't say that. They had people in the congressional, and I don't care, I'm not even agreeing with the tactics that were used by folks, to try to challenge the count. But I'm just saying this is something similar that happened before in 2016. They've always been trying to undermine people's confidence in the elections when the designated villains are elected. And we just have to reject the binary completely. We can't look at things in such a simplistic fashion. You see Mitch McConnell's getting on the bandwagon, and of course he would always be on the bandwagon of what the big pharma products want. They want everybody to get it. They want kids to get it. And they're reliably on board for the interests of these giant corporations, not your family. There's people saying, they're trying to scapegoat people who don't take these rushed products into being the blame for anybody who gets this disease. But in fact, there's an argument that, that's not at all the case. But when Big Pharma has such an influence in DC's bureaucracy, in science funding, in news media, hitting people daily with propaganda can make them do ridiculous things. Low information people, gullible people, people filled with rage, people who are traumatized by the news, they can get caught up into a stupor, which, really is driving so much of the people's trust for these narratives of fear. Always fear, 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 fear. And that's one of the things that we have to, push back against. We have to push back against this fear mongering that the media wants us to buy into for everything. Wall Street Journal has an opinion column called "The Flimsy Evidence Behind the CDC's Push to Vaccinate Children." It says the agency overcounts COVID hospitalizations and death and won't consider if one shot is sufficient. A tremendous number of government and private policies affecting kids are based on one number, 335. That is how many children under 18 have died with a COVID diagnosis code in their record, according to the CDC. Yet, the CDC, which has 21,000 employees, hasn't researched each death to find out whether COVID caused it or if it involves a pre-existing medical condition. Why would they? Their whole model is a revolving door relationship with these giant pharmaceutical companies. Why would they? They have no incentive. It's like asking Walmart to go in and look at all the things they've ever done wrong and go against their narrative for why you should shop there. Why would they? Why would they? That's the question you have to ask about the CDC. Why would they? Why would they investigate these types of things? They're just giving a blank check to the revolving door friends they have in big pharmaceuticals to do whatever they want to do. And we're just all supposed to trust them in them, put our faith in them, put our skin in the game. They won't put their skin in the game for these products. They won't put their skin in the game with liability, but we have to, including your babies, according to these Luddites. And they are Luddites because they don't want to have a conversation about the actual scientific data. They just want to scare you into submission and blame you and scapegoat you and make you feel unwanted in society, make you feel isolated. That's their thing. That's not science. The only thing that's science is political science. That's the kind of science they're dealing with. Without these data, the CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices decided in May that the benefits of two-dose vaccination outweighs the risks for all kids 12 to 15. I've written hundreds of peer-reviewed medical studies, and I can think of no journal editor who would accept the claim that 335 deaths resulted from a virus without data to indicate if the virus was incidental or causal, and without an analysis of irrelevant risk factors such as obesity. These people always try to wrap themselves up in sanctimony. Oh, we're the moral people. But you won't tell people what's driving obesity, and you won't tell people to stop doing obesity. They've been pushing people into this great reset nonsense with lockdowns and garbage quackery on the television every day for how long now? A year and a half? They imagine how much, if they're worried about kids, why aren't they promoting? Why isn't Biden mumbling and bumbling about obesity? Because who owns the patent for reducing obesity? Do you see how stupidly obvious these patterns of their behavior are? It's ridiculous. They're not going to do that. You always have to ask, why would an impotent, corrupt, completely dubious government, completely dubious on every story that matters in our lifetime, just about, why would they lift a finger to actually give rigorous science and research that would undermine their blank check for their customers? Okay? They have no incentive to. They have a monopoly. They are the monopoly. There's no bigger corporation than the government. No one stops what they do. They can do whatever they want, and all the other, countries and science research groups around the world cower in fear with whatever America sets. It's not America, it's DC's, crony establishment. Whatever they set, everybody has to go along with. The NIH funds so many institutions around the world, not just ours. I mean, you know what they did with Wuhan Institute of Virology. My research team, this is the Wall Street Journal opinion piece. My research team at Johns Hopkins worked with the nonprofit Fair Health to analyze 48,000 children under 18 diagnosed with COVID in health insurance data from April to August 2020. Our report found a mortality rate of 0 among children without a pre-existing medical condition such as leukemia. If that trend holds, it has significant implications for healthy kids and whether they need 2 vaccine doses. The National Education Association has been debating whether to urge schools to require vaccination before returning to school in person. How can they or anyone debate the issue without the right data? Meanwhile, we've already seen inflated COVID death numbers in the U.S. revised downward. Last month, Alameda County, California, reduced its COVID death toll by 25% after state public health officials insisted that deaths be attributed to COVID only if the virus was a direct or contributing factor. Organizations and politicians who are eager to get every living American vaccinated are following the CDC without understanding the limitations of the methodology. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky claimed that vaccinating 1 million adolescent kids would prevent 200 hospitalizations and 1 death over 4 months. But the agency's COVID adolescent hospitalization report, like its death count, doesn't distinguish on the website whether a child is hospitalized for COVID or with COVID. And it says the subsequent morbidity and mortality weekly report of that analysis revealed that 45.7% were, quote, hospitalized for reasons that might not have been, primarily related to COVID-19. So again, they don't want to present the facts. They just want to, push manipulated information. That's all they talk about. We just follow facts. No, you follow manipulation and emotional traumatic language to bully people. And a lot of the Republican establishment is totally on board with that same stupid groupthink. They are the designated losers. You will hear people on radio who are afraid to challenge the groupthink and say, no, stop pushing this on kids. Stop making the pharmaceutical companies your passport to frickin' life. Who in the world do these people think they are? They would save so many more lives if they wanted to mandate something, mandate that you have to get omega-6 seed oils out of your diet completely. That would save more lives than anything, but these people have no understanding of the science, apparently, and they have no desire to look into science. They have no desire to do things that are not resulting in patented products. Losing weight is not a patented product. Getting seed oils out of your life is not a patented product. That's why the stupid hacks at ABC News Radio won't talk to you about that. They won't tell you, in other news, please get these seed oils our government tells you to eat every day out of your diet. They don't say that, right? Because they're stupid, robotic hacks. That's what they do. They have no incentive to change. They have a customer base. They have a revolving door relationship between giant, unaccountable multinational corporations and media and government bureaucracies. It's all a revolving door friendship. You're not involved. You're not invited. You are told to sit, roll over, heal, and be quiet. And you can't accept this. This is not conducive for a free society. This is not what the world expects at the heart of America. People tell me, oh, don't talk about America. You just got to talk about, no. We have to defend the principles that are the best parts of our founding and the things that have made us have extraordinary opportunity, even mixed in with error. So we have to fight for the things that our country has. There's people in lockdowns around the world who are way more heavy-handed lockdowns. Our relative decentralization of government power with the states and locals, however much is left, has given us some measure of protection from out-of-control groupthink, crowd phenomena sweeping over the rule of law. But we must continue to fight and speak out forthright in order to keep this conversation from being dominated by people who want to create a false left-right little divide where you have to pick between, Team MAGA or Team Mitch McConnell or Team Biden, and you can't just think critically for yourself. It's a problem. And Trump was a part of it on this issue. because he's the one that refuses why doesn't he speak? I mean, I guess he spoke out and said kids shouldn't be forced to do it, but he should speak out more. But he wants the political clout of trying to take credit for this product as long as it's fashionable and it's what the establishment wants to promote. Remember, he still has a long-term desire for these establishment institutions to validate him. He still longs for their recognition the way he used to have it in this mainstream media. He still desires, fundamentally, even with all the abuse they give him, still desires to be brought back into the fold in a narrative sense and be given credit by these establishment elitists. But it's a waste of time. We should think critically. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you, don't let people bully you who have obvious biases and obvious conflicts of interest. I'm David Gornosky. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. We are live on radio. You can call in at 727-587-1040. That's 727-587-1040. Back in a moment.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. Hello, this is David Gornosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now.
NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Mental illness is up dramatically since the epidemic hit America. Consider this from the Holy Scripture.
Prepare your minds for action, and being sober-minded, set your hope full on the grace that will be brought to you. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13.
Are you sober-minded? Do you think there's no hope? There is, and it's waiting for you at your local church. There you'll find a healthy mindset that will give you strength and wisdom. The welcoming committee is there waiting for you. See you soon.
A Neighbor's Choice is back. We're live on radio, podcast, video stream, our website, aneighborschoice.com. That's the letter A, neighborschoice.com, where you can find our content, including our online-only content that isn't available on the radio stream we do every day, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., live here. And also, if you're listening on News Talk Florida, make sure you set it to this station. And this is your go-to station in this area across Tampa Bay, which is the heart and soul of a lot of people's, desire in terms of a lot of people want to move to Florida. They want to move in the Central Florida area. And a lot of people are interested in coming to this community because of the relative respect for liberty to some degree that Florida has maintained in these crazy times. So we're glad to have you there if you're listening in the radio. And again, you can call in at 727-587-1040 and chime in with any questions. Candace Owens, I like this comment she made here. She said, can anybody point me to that one time in history where the side that was demanding censorship, segregation, propaganda, radical education, papers to move freely in society, plus government forces going door to door to demand compliance were the good guys? I think that's a good way to frame it, because it's obvious that that's not been a good track record. You know, movements that have to do that, are really weak, and they're really desperate. You know, it's kind of what, Slavoj Žižek talks about with the extremists, the radical Islamic terrorists and so forth, the suicide terrorists, that, the folks who are really true believers in this kind of thing, they're not acting out of power. They're acting out of desperation. They feel drawn into the, the decadence of Western modernity, and it's got them more tantalized or seduced than they want to, consciously reckon with. And so these extremist types that go to the point of, doing suicide terrorism, they're not acting out of confidence in their beliefs. They're not acting out of, extreme relaxation that their beliefs will win. They're acting out of a sense of, desperation. And I think that's kind of similar. I'm not saying it's the same level. You have to always explain to low info folks that watch CNN that we're not saying, therefore, left-wing people are in that same level of extremism. We're not saying that at all. We're saying that there's a gradient of aggressive political demands that are not a sign of confidence in one's beliefs, but rather a desperate fear. And some people are well-meaning. They really believe in the TV narratives, but they just believe whatever the TV tells them, and they don't care. They put this kind of burden on people's backs every day, inundating them with demands. But it's true. I mean, they are demanding censorship. They're absolutely doing censorship. They've deleted the leading opposition candidate to their whole, Donald Trump, whether you like him or not. They've deleted him off the face of the internet. Total scam job, and it makes you wonder, how far this, thing goes here, because the more we keep looking into this January 6th event, we see more and more questions, like why didn't they provide security at the Capitol? Why didn't they, why do they have people who remain, unindicted co-conspirators? Why does this storming of the Capitol deal look exactly like the what happened in Michigan, where they were had 12 out of the 18 conspirators were FBI informants? I mean, at what point are they the majority party? I mean, they are the majority party in that case of doing the whole thing, including getting the idea. Isn't that entrapment? Whatever happened to the concept of entrapment? And then so they go into the Michigan Capitol in this Governor Whitmer, kidnapping story, and the police let them in, and they tell them you got to do your COVID temperature checks, and you can walk on in with their guns. And they walk on in, and there's media there taking photos and videos. I mean, it's exactly what we saw on January 6th. Police were just, we've played the clips on this show where they're saying, hey, come on in. Just don't, we're not going to, just don't be violent. And then you hear the guy with the buffalo head, whoever that guy is, saying, oh yeah, guys, don't be violent. And then you see the clip of them saying this stuff. And then they come on in, and there's lots of media there taking photographs. And, oh, now we have to delete the president because he's talking off script. He's talking about, he's just talking too rough. He's talking about ending wars, and he's talking about generic drugs during a pandemic when you're supposed to only promote patented products. This is a great traumatic event to just obliterate the man off the face of the internet, and then demonize anybody who shows any that anybody who doesn't hate him with a passion is considered to be a threat. It's pathetic. This is desperate weakness. This is not a sign of strength. It's embarrassing. It is really embarrassing. And I say that a lot lately, but it's just cringy. It's so cringy. It's embarrassing and I'm amazed that people can't see this more clearly, but we'll continue to cover these stories with fairness. Back in just a moment.
Weekdays, 9 to noon.
Joe Biden's catastrophic, corrupt, it's not even a missing inkling of the border.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
And we're going to invite the cartels and the human traffickers and the child sex traffickers and the smugglers and the coyotes and the fentanyl traffickers and the heroin traffickers.
Chris Plant.
We're going to invite them into our country, and if you don't like it, you're a racist.
Chris Plant. Weekdays, 9 to noon. News Talk 1040. WHBO.
At the White House today, President Biden signed into law a fix to sustain the Crime Victims Fund Act of 2021. It's aimed at strengthening federal funding for the victims of crime and to keep critical recovery and health programs for victims from closing.
This bill is going to allow us to make sure that all the fines and penalties that are from federal cases go into the Crime Victims Fund to rebuild this fund because it's badly needed.
This hour, the president meeting with union leaders to talk about infrastructure. For the first time since May 1st, the U.S. logging over 45,000 new coronavirus cases in a single day. That happened yesterday. The Delta variant is fueling new infections. The NFL clamping down on unvaccinated players, saying if a game is canceled this fall due to a COVID outbreak among players who aren't vaccinated, the game can't be rescheduled. The club with the outbreak will forfeit and take the loss. Michelle Franzen.
So you see the wall-to-wall pressure campaign. If you're listening on radio or video stream, ABC's gleefully reporting that the NFL's announced a policy where if somebody, I guess, tests positive for COVID and they were unvaccinated or something, they're going to get an automatic loss for their team and there won't be a replay or whatever. I mean, it's just extreme amount of coercion. This is not a sign of strength. This is a sign of desperation. They've got a lot of useful idiots that can't even remember what medical ethics actually look like. The idea of informed consent, not a rush product. And at some point, if these people keep piling up examples of people who got both shots in Israel and other places around the world who get both shots and still get COVID, and even some of them still die. I'm not saying that they promised that they would save you from anything, but they're pushing it so much as if it's such a magic bullet that you've got to take no matter what. Or you can't. Don't worry about losing weight. If you look at seed oils and you see how they're contributing to the pathway by which people have acute respiratory distress with this disease. No. That's not authorized science. It's actually good, great science, but you're not allowed to look at that because there's no patent that ends in that research, and that's therefore there's just a complete institutional bias away from looking at those things. And so, when you see this kind of constant coercion, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And then they push this onto kids. You say, why are you so desperate? What happened to skepticism that the left used to have about unaccountable corporations where they get to, they used to say it all the time. Back in the day, let's just say even more recently, 2004 and so forth, it was hard to choose if you were an independent thinker whether you detested the Republicans or the Democrats more. I mean, they had some good things and bad things on both sides. But now it's become both establishments are so lockstep on all the bad stuff. And the Democrats have lost their way they used to be so skeptical of corporate power. They used to be so skeptical about corporations that could have things like legal immunity where they get to profit billions of dollars from rush products. And again, if anything happens, at what point will the narrative switch? Like, for example, this is just a hypothetical. If they start piling up more and more cases of people who are getting bad experiences with this, even though they've got both doses. At what point will they switch the narrative like a herd and say, oh, well, the only reason why they're having problems is Orange Man Bad did it. He rushed it. He's, unreliable. That's why we deleted him off the internet. When will that narrative kick in? That's what when will that narrative kick in? I don't think they want to use that narrative, but they're always going to come up with an excuse for why they're gods and they're unassailable. You can never question anything they say. They don't know anything about science, but they sure love to use that as a little big other, as some kind of transcendent ideological other by which they can bully people into submitting to their politics. It's absolutely repulsive. And speaking of that, here's Dr. Ken Berry, who we've had on the program several times. He's a popular doctor that advocates for keto and getting rid of seed oil. So someone that actually cares about helping people rather than just getting a bumper sticker or a, postcard for the science, Back in the 1940s and 50s, a lobotomy in the treatment of certain mental disorders was considered, quote, settled science. If a doctor questioned this barbaric procedure, he would have been viewed as ignorant or inadequate. In fact, in 1949, the inventor of the procedure, Dr. Antonio Egas Moniz, was awarded the Nobel Prize for his discovery. Lobotomy was considered standard of care, and any neurosurgeon not performing this accepted procedure would have been considered substandard. Looking back now, we realize how ignorant these doctors were and how dangerous this procedure was. Thousands of patients had their self destroyed by this procedure and became docile, robotic, non-humans. So when you hear someone say the phrase settled science, just remember that the lobotomy used to be that. When you hear someone talk about standard of care, realize that this is often based on no meaningful research and based entirely on the opinions of a few, quote, experts, unquote, in the field. There is no such thing as settled science. Everything should be questioned and studied. Standard of care is a false paradigm implying that we know everything about a subject there is to know, and that this model should not be questioned. Think, study, watch, research, debate. We are figuring it out as we go. And it's just, this is the way a good liberal mind thinks too. What happened to the left? I don't understand it. How did they lose their mind and lose their principles so much? I know there are millions and millions and millions of independents and other true progressives that are a little bit more mindful about these things, but it's just insane how so many people still buy into this stuff. It should be 10% of the population buying into this forced. I'm not saying 10% take the product. I'm saying this idea of forcing people. But it reveals something about, what they found with the, things like the Stanley Milgram experiment and other different things where they looked at how when you give people permission from an authority figure to be vicious and mean and antisocial in the treatment of others, that a lot of people would take the opportunity if they feel that an authority figure is telling them to do it. And I think that's the mean part. That's really kind of the dark side of humanity that gets really awakened when you have a crowd hysterical phenomena like we have. And the media is the biggest architect of this stuff, constantly inundating people with negativity and not giving people, at least try to give them a little bit of, they used to try in some cases to give what others say, but they don't do the others say. It's just, this is reality. Brought to you by our friends at Pfizer. In their ad breaks, But this is reality. That's how they do it. You cannot question us. You can question elections we tell you can question, but if you're concerned about what's going on in Fulton County, oh, you're not a member of the state, of the society. You're a monster. This is a desperate play. You can't have a long-term society that functions like this when you're demonizing more than half the country. If they don't tote the line for every single stupid idea they come up with, pushing products onto little kids and stuff is sick. But we've lost some of that, that self-awareness that we expect from the folks on the establishment left. Johnson & Johnson looks at moving liabilities from baby powder asbestos lawsuits into separate company, which will then file for bankruptcy and bid to avoid $2 billion payouts. This is from Reuters, published 3 days ago. And, So you look at this story, you're like, okay, so these are the same companies that we're told, you know, you have to take these products or you're not a nice person. But we have a long record. We've read the stories before. Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. These companies have a long history of having some really shady, you know, accountability in terms of side effects for products that they don't want responsibility for. And because they have such a cush relationship with the federal government, they're, you know, that's what they said. Remember that story I think it was in Pfizer we talked about a few months ago, where we said the story was in all the corporate press, the CNBCs, the types of media outlets. They were saying, yeah, Pfizer got a criminal charge with the federal government, but they got to put the criminal charge on another company, a shell company they created so that Pfizer could keep selling products, right? Because the rules of the law is that if you have a criminal charge, you can't have, you know, products approved in the system. So they gave him a slap on the wrist. So if you have such a hubristic company with a lot of money and no downside and little weak sycophants in the bureaucracies that are all staffed mostly by your own folks, what is your incentive to check your framework? They may be sincere in what they want to push to you to help you, but their paradigm's off. You know, all they focus on in these big pharma circles is mitigation of symptoms. They don't actually look at functional medicine. They don't look at holistic approaches to the human body, which is where, you know, billions of people are relearning these approaches and adding to that with great rigorous scientific research. So this is a frontier moment for medicine. And I'm telling you, this medicine question, medical freedom and health freedom, is the kind of tip of the spear of this whole paradigm shift we need to get out of the 20th century mindset of top-down central planning of our lives and worshipful devotion to state violence to solve our problems. You must do this. Oh, well, we can't do it directly. Well, we'll create a cartel of an industry, and then we'll lean on them with a lot of pressure, whether it's social media or airlines or whatever, to force them to force you. Well, that's the same statist failed paradigm. You know, some people are pushing back. RollingStone.com says Eric Clapton will not play shows where proof of vaccine is required. Musician issued statement after UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said vaccine passes would be required at clubs and venues. So Eric Clapton, he's not going to perform at venues that require attendees to prove that they've been vaccinated against the COVID-19. So, you know, it takes people who are in their twilight of their career to have any courage to challenge in a public way the groupthink of their time, you know? And so if you're a young star, you go to Biden's White House and they say, hey, there you go. That's a good little team player. You know where your bread is buttered or whatever. You know where you got to go. The establishment. You want the cool kids to give you a red carpet for your career to advance, to get more popular, more money. You're a young singer. You gotta go with the groupthink. You can't go against it. But someone like Eric Clapton, you know, he's not 20 years old. He's got he's had a long career. You know, he's got a little bit more freedom to be ethically considerate of his own customers. You know, he's got that wisdom that he can actually, you know, take the heat, because he took the product and he said he had some serious problems with it. He has a right to say that. Don't let anti-science quacks from ABC or whoever tell you that Eric Clapton is not allowed to tell you about the side effects that he's had. You shouldn't listen to those folks at all, because they're not talking in good faith. Good faith is, let's have a debate. Let's look at the facts. Let's have an honest and free discourse. But they don't want that, because that threatens their fragile place in the hearts and minds of people. You know, someone asked me in the comment section, would love more of those anthropological deep dives you mentioned a few episodes ago. We put them out on Things Hidden. Check out the Things Hidden podcast on ourneighborschoice.com. But we weave anthropological analysis in the current events of our time, because media, the news media, is the vestige of the myth-making role of the scribal cast, right? They would mediate between the gods or the big stories that we had inherited from our ancestors and the average Joe, who wanted to say, well, why are we doing this ritual? Why do we do this harvest festival? Why do we do this sacrifice of a 15-year-old kid like we see in the mountains of South America? Why do we see this stuff? Well, because these priests tell you, well, once upon a time, our ancestors, or once upon a time, the gods said that you must do this or else you awaken the wrath of the gods. So that was a more primitive, in our perspective, version, a more symbolically protected version of what I'm doing, what I'm exposing on my program. So this is anthropology in real time, where I'm able to show you, using these vestiges of priestly myths and current events, news stories, and showing you, see how I'm deconstructing the hidden violence that they're suggesting is okay and they want you to comply with. So that's kind of how that works. So on Things Hidden, our podcast, which we have several episodes coming out very soon, some very exciting guests from a wide range of topics that you're going to want to check out. But then, and I think it's important to not only have those deep dives in history and things like that in anthropology, but also to use the same critical thinking toolkit that we developed together in current events in real time. Because one thing I don't like is when people, because trust me, it would be a lot easier for me if I just stayed in the academic type, world of talking about, anthropology and ethics and theology and all these different heavy, big concepts, and I don't touch current events. It's a lot easier in some ways to do that, right? Because you can say a lot of stuff advocating for nonviolence or explaining the mechanism of scapegoating and things like that. You can do it in an abstract way where it doesn't touch anybody's rice bowl, or it doesn't touch anybody's sacred cows. It doesn't get dirty in the world of politics. But I think too many people do that. Too many people, including a lot of scholars and academicians, they do that route. And I decided that I wasn't going to do that route. I wasn't going to just sit in a ivory tower framework and pursue that kind of academic type way of doing things, where you stay out of, above the fray, and you don't really touch current events. You don't really say, well, so I've explained to you the scapegoat mechanism. I've explained to you how societies in ancient history would look for scapegoats and witch hunts to alleviate stress in the time of a pandemic, right? I can explain that in an abstract way, and that's a lot easier to not ruffle feathers. But then I can also do something which I think is a little bit more needed, is to do that high view stuff, but then also connect it right back to, okay, well, you can see how that plays out in the headlines today. And it's not just one side, but one side has the hegemonic control of our culture, the McWoke left, or whatever you want to call it, because they more effectively imitate the concern for victims that Christianity has unleashed in our culture, haunting us with the way we do violence and aggression and that kind of thing. So the left has more effectively mimicked the aesthetic of Christian concern for victims. So I say all of that just to say that I think both approaches, both the daily radio show and Neighbor's Choice that we're doing now, as well as the podcast, Things Hidden, are complementary. Okay. And I think they go hand in hand. So we have some great guests coming out on Things Hidden that you're going to really like. But we'll take a break and return with some more news stories. And up next, we'll also hear from Science and You in just a moment. I'm David Gronowski. Stay with us.
David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Hello, this is David Konofsky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
You're looking at this, the photograph from Jennifer Epstein, who says what the Biden CNN town hall looks like from the back of the auditorium, and there's mostly empty seats. I mean, and it's amazing. You know, people say, my goodness, this guy has got the most votes of any per 81 million votes, the most popularly elected president of all time. There's nothing like it. It's just a phenomenon. He can't even fill up a stadium. I mean, I guess they could say, oh, they'll probably have an excuse. We had a limitation of how many people or whatever. But, it's just such a pathetic, emperor has no clothes thing that we constantly see, whether it's Fauci shaking and throwing out aggression instead of facts against Senator Rand Paul. And that's all the left has. The left, they always mock Rand Paul because, he doesn't go to the right ophthalmology board or whatever. But that's all they have. Their whole thing is nominalism. It's all about credentialism, That's all they've got. It's a shell of reality. It's not reality. They try to impugn you if you don't have the right credentials or anything. And Fauci's just a bureaucrat. But in their mind, they're very low info, gullible people. They trust whatever the TV tells them as if it's reality itself. And so they don't think about the long history of their own thought where they criticized corporate collusion and corporate, influence in DC. Oh, that all goes out the window. Now they just think about, TV says it, therefore I believe it. Why? Because TV says it. Echo, a commenter says, in 6 months on social media, he says, in 6 months, we've gone from the vax ending the pandemic to you can still get COVID even if vaxxed to you can pass COVID on to others even if vaxxed to you can still die of COVID even if vaxxed to the unvaxxed are killing the vaxxed. I mean, and that, again, it's just a shifting narrative. This is what happens when you attack, the idea of objective truth. Everything is just my truth, my feelings, right? And feeling is a good thing. But if it's feeling based on warped sense of reality, you can feel great in a cult. A lot of people feel completely, cured of diseases and addictions when they join a cult. And they can feel enlightened and mindful from their guru who trains them, but they're still in a cult. They're still in something that's fundamentally twisted at its core. And we need to understand how cult type behavior works with wide scale ideologies. And whether people understand what they're doing or not, they're participating in things which end up warping people's perspective of reality. Luca comments on our live stream, I find that there are pockets on Twitter that are high quality in terms of discourse, and that Facebook and its subsidiaries are largely cesspools. Another says, Joseph says, the only thing that makes sense to me is that we are seeing a spiritual delusion. Tina says, props to Clapton. Meanwhile, Springsteen on Broadway is returning, but audience members must show proof of vaccination. It's an attempt to try to create a class separation. We're the good people. You're the scumbags. You know. Meanwhile, they won't have the decency to tell people what could really solve a lot of chronic illnesses is preventative medicine, is getting rid of vegetable oils. They don't want to talk about that because that goes against another TV groupthink narrative that red meat is bad for the environment. When in fact, that's not the case. But it's just one little mythic narrative of nonsense on top of another. Another commenter says, have you heard of Sam Keen, author of some books on the history of science? His latest book is on creative ideas in the history of science. I enjoyed his book on neuroscience history, philosophy of mind. I've not heard of that. Another, Dr. Reed says, hi, David, great show. I agree. Good faith is the realization that you are flawed, and those who believe they are omnipotent are to be questioned, as their faith is a bad faith, which fears truth. And I agree that that's a reality. Paul says, what is the name of the podcast? Thanks. That would be, I believe you're talking about Things Hidden, which is the podcast. It's on the same. If you subscribe to our podcast feed, just search for David Gornosky on any podcast platform, and you'll see our Things Hidden episodes in the same feed as the A Neighbor's Choice radio episodes. But you can also go to aneighborschoice.com and click on shows and hit Things Hidden podcast, where you can watch them in that video or audio format on the website. So there's a lot of ways to get our content, and we're excited about expanding into more platforms like Rumble, which continues to have a lot of new faces and people join us. That's always great to see new people, new communities join us in our interactive show. So that's one of the things that I think we have to be mindful of, is doing what we can to build community that's based on love, based on creativity, based on, love of science, love of our neighbor, a positive story, not something that's about tearing down, hating, and trying to create another excuse to have bigoted elites exclude other people. They've been, that's what these folks in establishment have been doing for a long time, always looking to create insider, outsider. Always looking for a new excuse to scapegoat people. That's what the scapegoat mechanism looks like. In the ancient world, people could scapegoat just by saying, well, weak, I'm strong. Gods love strong people. You're weak, therefore I can destroy you. I can kill you. I can sacrifice you. You're not as important, right? But now, because of Christianity's influence and softening and breaking our appetite for that, now they always have to come up with clever justifications for, I get to do something, you get sacrificed. But now it's these little delusional myths like, well, the science says the only thing you can possibly do to take care of yourself in a pandemic is to take products that were rushed to market, that our own politicians told us Trump was doing dubious stuff to push them fast, and they have legal immunity. And even though there's other products that are therapeutics, that are generics, we can't talk about that because TV says, science says, just like the lobotomies, just like the you got to smoke cigarettes because the doctor says. They just fall in line. You're wondering, people are so arrogant. They always say, man, if I was back in the days of those cigarette ad things, man, how could they not see how ridiculous the propaganda was that doctors recommend smoking cigarettes a day? Or the same thing goes for, the whole lobotomy thing. Well, back then the science is settled. You have to do a lobotomy to get people to have care. And that's always what people do. And people's arrogance is that they believe that they would not be drawn to that in past times. The point is, though, we should be more able to see these mimetic, scapegoating blind spots because we have more history behind us to look back. So we have to educate ourselves. We have to free our minds from the clutter of negativity and hate and build a conversation around love. I'm David Gornowski. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. We'll take a break and return with hour 2 with our Science and You segment and more headlines in the news.
For news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news. From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. After beating back COVID, new infections in the U.S. have soared to highs not seen in years. Yesterday, 45,000 COVID cases were reported. Health officials say fueled by the Delta variant. The CDC is not changing its mask guidance so far, saying adults who are not vaccinated and kids who cannot get vaccinated should mask up. Some states, though, are breaking with that guidance. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said Thursday he will not make schools impose mask mandates for kids.
We need our kids to be able to be kids. We need them to be able to breathe. It's terribly uncomfortable for them to do it.
I asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki if that puts kids in Florida at risk. She said yes.
If I were a parent in Florida, that would be greatly concerning to me because kids under the age of 12 are not vaccinated. They're not eligible yet.
Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House. The road to economic recovery also hitting a few bumps. Jobless claims went up again last week. 419,000 Americans filing for first-time claims, higher than the previous week. In Japan, the official start of the delayed 2020 Summer Olympic Games now just hours away. And the pandemic will be center stage at the opening ceremony with COVID cases surging. ABC's Kenneth Moten is in Tokyo.
In the past, we've seen some vibrant, impressive shows packed with athletes to celebrate the official kickoff of the Summer Olympics. But no surprise, Tokyo 2020 will be different. Officials say this opening ceremony will not be a festival. It will be a solemn event that will deliver a message of togetherness. There's 11,000 athletes expected in this country over the next 2 weeks, but only half of that number will parade into Olympic Stadium tomorrow night.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi now considering adding 2 more Republicans to the January 6th Select Committee after Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy pulled out 5 when she rejected 2 GOP members. The first hearing next week. You're listening to ABC News.
Do you check your Google search results regularly? You should. People often get their first impression of you or business online. Negative comments on the impact your life and your livelihood. Take control of your online reputation. Get your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com. It may reveal negative posts from an ex-employee, upset patient or client, news article, legal issue, or even exposed personal information right there in your Google search results. Uncover what's lurking on the internet about you with reputationdefender.com's patented scan and get your free reputation report card. Or for immediate assistance with your reputation, call 800-401-6681. Our cutting-edge technology helps make your Google search results look their best. Call 800-401-6681. That's 800-401-6681. 800-401-6681. Or take the free scan at reputationdefender.com.
Attorney General Merrick Garland in Chicago today, touring a police department, part of a 2-day tour to kick off a new federal strike force to combat crime and gun violence. The program targeting New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. Here's NBC's Mary Alice Parks.
He listed the 5 cities around the country that he's going to be working closely with. The idea that federal prosecutors, federal law enforcement agents will now deploy to some of the biggest cities in the country to work on issues of violent crime, to work on drug trafficking and specifically gun violence.
At the White House today, President Biden signing into law a fix to replenish the Crime Victims Fund Act of 2021. That bill makes sure critical recovery and health programs for crime victims don't run out of money.
This way those deals are what they did is literally, not figuratively, change the lives of women and children and some men out there.
Florida winds are helping fire crews out west battle over 70 major wildfires burning. Crews using bulldozers and helicopters are also helping fight a blaze in Oregon that's grown to over 624 square miles, over half the size of Rhode Island. Major websites like Airbnb, AT&T, and Delta Airlines briefly down today. Internet network company Akamai fixed the problem a short while later. This is ABC News.
If the pandemic's taught us anything, it's that the easiest way for germs to get into your body is the nose. Lavage uses powered suction to flush out allergens, mucus, and germs that cause congestion, colds, and flu, so you can breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and feel healthier. Experience Lavage at zero risk. Go to Lavage.com, buy Lavage, and use it for a month. If you're not delighted, return it for a full refund. There's nothing to lose and a lifetime of better breathing to gain. Lavage, Lavage.
Michelle Phones and ABC.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Raleigh are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Raleigh saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor David Garnotsky. So glad to be with you live again. We're going to have another great show for you in this second hour of today's live radio broadcast. And, of course, it's Thursday, which means it's time for our Science and You segment. We've been doing this on Thursdays for some time now, and it's always got its own excited questions and comments and response from our audience. And it's great to take a break because most of the time we do, on my show, I have guests on talking about politics and culture and economics. And frankly, there's a lot, I think overall we're heading in the right direction in the big picture of the world, but there's a lot of negative stories going on in the American frame of where I'm situated in the current flow of the culture and political scene. And it seems like we're doing everything wrong economically, but it's always exciting to take a break from that and look to the stars, look to the subatomic particles, and do it with a fresh perspective that's not afraid to challenge sacred cows, not afraid to challenge the science has settled people. People think that's only in virology, that's only in these more news-driven fields right now, or news-sensitive fields, I'll put it that way. But it's not. The science is settled as a kind of groupthink, mimetic herd mentality that seeps into all kinds of disciplines, including what I believe to be one of the most sacred in terms of the world of scientism, and that is the world of physics. So joining me now is our chief science advisor and physicist, Dr. Yu. How you doing?
Thank you, David, for having me on. I'm doing great.
Well, great having you as always. And so let's just look at some of the stories going on today. We have this one that I think is interesting, which is this is an interesting story in PubMed.gov. It says, "What are you feeling? Using functional magnetic resonance imaging to assess the modulation of sensory and affective responses during empathy for pain." Now, this is published a few years ago, but this is the first time I think I've seen this story. Recent neuroscientific evidence suggests that empathy for pain activates similar neural representations as the first-hand experience of pain. However, empathy is not an all or none phenomenon, but it is strongly malleable by interpersonal, intrapersonal, and situational factors. This study investigated how 2 different top-down mechanisms, attention and cognitive appraisal, affect the perception of pain. in others and its neural underpinnings. What do you think of this story?
Well, I think, if they use the state-of-the-art, technology to imaging the human brain, so use MRI and image the brain and can measure emotional or attention and or emotional effect on perception of the pains of other people. So some kind applied modern technology to study, human cognitives. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So what does that mean? Does that give us some evidence for what you've said before? Is that our thoughts have magnetic frequencies, even every thought we can imagine?
Yes, that's exactly what that's magnetic imaging, technique do. The most important part is the permanent magnets. So, and they have a strong magnetic field, and then they have some kind of oscillating, variant magnetic field. And that's how they image the brain. They generate a strong magnetic field, of course, within the tolerance of human brain, right? And then what happens? You generate the magnetic field, vibration of magnetic field, and that magnetic field interact with human cells, which are made by magnetic particles, magnetic cells. What happens? Those cells vibrate. Mm-hmm. When those cells vibrate, it means that they interact with the machine's magnetic field, so then you can pick up a signal. But in this case, they have a fixed magnetic field, right? But they let called participants and look at the pictures with with a patient, with a needle poke on the people, you can see visually painful from the patients, right? And another one, they use a needle to poke on patients, without the patients have a anesthesia, so basically it's numbed. It does not show that one. But they said, the human response recorded in the machine is how your brain reacts. When you look at the picture, you have an emotion effect and have an attention effect, and you generate in the brain waves, thoughts in certain area. And the machine can pick up which area has higher voltage change. They pick up as a light signal, see the light are bright out. So that's a voltage change. So by pick up those signals, they know how human feeling react, response, the participants' response to the picture they see. And so once again, this demonstrate the brain wave is actually generate a magnetic field. This is the magnetic wave. And that magnetic wave interact with the machine's electromagnetic field. And then you create your voltage change, so you create the electric signals. So you can view from the screen.
Well, that leads me to another question for you, which is how come what is the physics explanation for why people report benefits sometimes from hypnotherapy, where they're getting into a relaxed state, and then people can make suggestions for them that allows them to correct certain behaviors like smoking and things like that. What is going on there in that situation? Is that just placebo effect in your opinion? I mean, obviously placebo effect has something to do probably more powerfully than we've begun to scratch the surface on, but how do you see that phenomenon playing out in relationship to this kind of subject of empathy having a magnetic correspondence?
Yes, I see them. That's the same interaction. When you have empathy, so you generate those kind of magnetic field. You generate kind of interaction magnetic field. Communicate with the human, with other human's body or brain directly, is wirelessly. It's all because of the magnetic field, vibration, and resonance. So that's how people can communicate without even opening your mouth, use voice, and or use drawings. So it's all, I believe this is kind of subconsciously magnetic field interaction. So when you're doing you said this state, the most relaxed state, That's the most. That's how signals is the most you can pick up the weakest signals. The easiest to pick up the weakest signals when you are in totally quiet, silent state. Yeah, just like solar panels. Just like the telescopes, the Hubble telescopes. In order to pick up the signals from millions of light years away. So the telescopes, the antenna has to be in the very, very cold state, quiet, cold state, stationary. So then they can pick up the minute signals. In this case, human totally relaxed and with the suggestions around from the people around him without even communicate with him, he can pick up the signals and respond.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so you have to get in a relaxed state.
That's exactly what that's what how the thought communicate between.
So what is in your mind, what is the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind from your physics perspective?
Okay, that's a good question. Conscious mind is have a stronger signals. Okay, have strong signals, and those strong signals created from the heart. That's the engine, right? And go through the brain, and with strong signals, so you can create those thoughts during the day at the rush hours, at the busy time, and if you still concentrate on work, you can still have a strong thought. So that's a thought you can aware yourself. Subconscious thoughts is not necessarily generated from your heart, from your conscious brain. It's from your subconscious brain. Many brain cells, only most of them have a strong electricity go through it in order to generate the thought. But the subconscious brain, that's those in the relaxed state, and from those brain cells, normally it may not active. And also your body, not just the brain cells, and also from your body. Everybody have a magnetic receiver. So that's how you have a sense. Somebody touching you, and the whole body knows I've been touched. So you have a sense. And the subconsciousness is a very weak signals. However, it is received not directly from a strong, the least resistant parts in the brain. It is from your entire body and some other brain cells.
Is that why hypnotherapists, when you see them, they'll talk about relax from your head to your toes and stuff like that? When you watch clips of them do this, that's what they tend to say. Pay attention to your shoulder, things like that. It's meant to talk to the body, basically.
Yes, that's how your body communicates with external change of heat, sound, what is the light, interact with the weak signals. That's how your whole body interact with them. Yes, and that's how your whole body tells you what to do. I know people have this one. Sometimes they only want to know in the brain, and sometimes they want it from heart, and sometimes the entire body excited, wanted to do something. That's where subconscious mind in action.
So how come the brain and the conscious level is always trying to organize and analyze things, but our bodies are more, I don't know, they don't do that as much, I guess, right?
Good question. But, actually the most efficient time for your brain to analyze, to digest the concepts, and analyze the complex situations is not during the day. Actually, I found it is during the sleep. Yeah, especially active between 2 in the morning to 4 o'clock in the morning. That's the time, I believe, especially during your sleeping, that's the time brain is the most active to analyze, digest concepts.
Very interesting. We're talking with Dr. Yu, our physicist friend and chief science advisor for our program, A Neighbor's Choice. We'll be back with more on Science and You after this short break. Stay with us.
Hello, this is David Chronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Hi, this is Gary from Good Faith Home Buyers, and I buy houses cash. If you own your house and want to sell it fast, call me at 727-330-6224. That's 727-330-6224. I can pay cash and close fast. I buy houses in any condition, any price range, and any location. I'm not a realtor or associated with any realty company. I'm a private real estate investor who buys several houses a month and wants to buy more. I'll buy inherited houses, divorce houses, behind in payment houses. I'll even buy my tenant won't pay me the rent houses. Do you own a house that is trash and needs thousands of dollars in repairs? Great, because I love buying junky houses. I buy vacant houses, abandoned houses, condemned houses, and foreclosure houses. If you own a house and want to sell it fast, call me at 727-330-6224. That's 727-330-6224.
This portion of the upcoming amazing broadcast is brought to you by the law firm of Catania & Catania, award-winning personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. We're live on radio and video stream and our website, aneighborschoice.com. You can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. And I want to give a shout out to oakleytransport.com. These are our friends that are helping people keep America fed. People have been saying there's a little concern about food shortages again. Store shelves might getting a little thin again. I mean, I'm not saying that's something for sure, but the people have raised that concerns with the way government has messed with the economy, and some of the prices for products and things are astronomical. You can't start and stop an economy like this without having some real fundamental problems in the way things are moved and supply and demand works. So go to oakleytransport.com if you're a CDL licensed driver who's ready to hit the road to keep America fed. oakleytransport.com is their website. Let them know David sent you. So when I look at this this story here that you've sent me, Dr. Yu, it says The Star Builders, Nuclear Fusion and the Race to Power the Planet. This is a book by Arthur Terrell. Is this a book you've read, or how did you get this interest?
I got this book from the link. Actually, you sent me the commenting on nuclear fusion race.
Okay.
Actually, they all started triggered by this book, so they discussed. Is that possible?
Yeah, you want to start with the Wall Street Journal story first, then? Let's start with that.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's this story in Wall Street Journal. It says startup claims breakthrough in long duration batteries. Is this the one you're talking about? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is another one.
Okay.
So you are talking about the battery. Actually, I like this this better.
Okay, go with that one.
Yes. This is still talking about the new battery technology. Now, right? Everybody works on the car battery, right?
Right.
Car battery, generate electric cars. So that's the hardest research in this. But this type of the battery. So these are huge industrial for the for the power grid, store energy. So store energy is basically battery for power grid. So you can imagine, it will be the size will be like a huge. You have the huge workshop, the buildings size, those kind of capacity to store energy. So why this one's new? Somehow we have some connection problem today. Okay, I hope you can still hear me.
I can hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good. So they basically say, okay, we can store electrical energy on the grid. So if on the grid, instead of for as long as 100 hours, instead of a current renewable energy, rely on solar energy, rely on the sunlight, right? Or the wind mill, rely on, you have to have a wind, export wind. Without those things, so then you do not have energy. So that renewable energy have a storage problem. But for this one, they said we can use ion air called battery. So basically, it is just a super capacitor, just a capacitor, but it just use ion and air basically insulator, right? And store electrical energy as a static magnetic field. That's all. But the real challenging will be the super capacitor discharge almost instantaneously. So, but in order to slow them discharge last for 100 hours, that's where technology kick in. You can slowly discharge them. You can store them. Use huge building size, ions and those capacitors. However, you can discharge them slowly and can last for 100 hours. But if you read it through, it only effect until 2025, so another 5 years away. And right now they are doing called a 200 million Series D financing round around. So, they are still looking for money, and it's already 200 million funding, right? Looking for money and try to develop those technologies. So, at the quickest will be 5 years away, or could be last another 10 or 20 years away.
Yeah, it says it uses iron pellets that fill the battery. And so
yes.
Do you think this is a big breakthrough, like the article reports?
No. They said that they just reinvent. They basically pick up some use the same technology as before. However, they put them away, but they think that by their reinvented use this technology, they can, based on the current advanced materials and advanced technology. So they think that we can make it achieve cost effective. That's the most important. Yeah. You cannot build something and the cost huge and too expensive for consumer to buy. So they said, we can lower the cost and so can achieve and use the cheapest material, iron.
So iron batteries is not necessarily the big breakthrough that it's been talked about in this story, but what do you think is the best energy breakthrough form for folks to explore? Nuclear fusion, low temperature nuclear fusion, something else? What do you think is where people need to focus their attention on in a broad sense? Fusion space, the battery refinement space?
I believe low temperature nuclear fusion. Basically, that's in the right direction.
Right.
I do believe that.
And so what about these breakthroughs in batteries, graphene batteries, things like that? Could they outpace low temperature nuclear energy?
Those technologies. Those technologies are talking about, tabletop device, right? You can use that technology working in everybody's home, but we are talking about the industrial scale, so that's kind of generating large electricity, device. Nuclear fusion, but this is not in a conventional sense. It's in the low temperature, called a low temperature nuclear reaction. We can achieve the same needs. I believe so.
Well, very good. Dr. Yu, it's always great having you on, and I want people to remember they can check out all of our Science and You episodes on neighborschoice.com. Just click on the show section and you'll see the Science and You section that has our whole catalog of different questions and science discoveries. So I appreciate you joining me as always.
Thank you.
And that's it. Again, that Science and You is on our neighborschoice.com website. And when we continue, we're going to get more into current events. We're going to look at more news headlines. Jeff Deist won't join us because he's doing the Mises U event over there, and they're having all their speakers and different students, very intelligent set of students they always draw to their events who are very hungry for the truth, hungry for economics, and they don't care about science-settled little nonsense that says, only one type of economics is allowed. That's what they do in everything. DC always picks one thing and says nothing else is allowed to be talked about. Well, Mises U begs to differ. So we'll take a break and return live on A Neighbor's Choice.
Our content is on fire for the truth.
Now, there's a new voice you can trust.
We, unlike any other program out there in the market today, are not afraid to tackle issues like science and nutrition and things like how to get out of debt, how to get your kids out of failing government schools.
Compelling information that affects your
The
life.
problems we have, they're not that hard to solve. We just gotta learn to roll up your sleeves and solve them ourselves.
Weekday afternoons 4 to 6. It's A Neighbor's Choice with David Gornosky.
News Talk 1040 WHBO.
You don't need a rocket scientist to do it.
Vice President Harris weighing in on a federal judge's decision last week to block future applications to the DACA
I want to
program.
make something clear. It will not immediately affect current DACA recipients.
Harris meeting virtually and in person today with Dreamers, undocumented Americans who were brought to the U.S. as children. Attorney General Merrick Garland visited the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to announce that the Justice Department will strengthen its Project Safe Neighborhoods program.
These are joint efforts of the U.S. Attorney's offices, of the ATF, of the FBI, of the DEA, of the Marshal Services, and all of the Justice Department law enforcement agencies, authorities, and resources.
Garland then visited Chicago, one of the many U.S. cities which has been hit hard by the rise in gun violence. The CDC says it is sticking now with its guidance that people who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 can go without masks, but those who aren't should wear them to be safe. Daria Albin, ABC.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm your host, David Gornosky. Let's continue looking at more stories and comments today. Adam Lane Smith says 30-year-olds in 1921 would say, I've got 9 kids, but I'm ready to step up and adopt my orphan nephew. 30-year-olds in 2021 say, I'm stressed about my cat's birthday next week. And it hits at something. Of course, there's always, typecasting and that kind of thing you want to avoid, but it does kind of hit at something that we all kind of know to be true, which is that we've lost something about our confidence and our zeal for life. And I think there's a lot of factors to that, why that's happened. Culture, nutrition, different things, different factors about that we've, told ourselves as our society. We've said, we've reached everything we needed to reach. Now we're just going to, do the greatest hits of our struggles in the past. That's not a healthy place to be. You want to be always hopeful, always pushing, being thankful for what you have, but never being completely satisfied with where the status quo is, but always wanting to seek further, ideas and breakthroughs and inventions. That's how you grow a society. That's how you create an environment in which people are thrilled to do risky things like adopt, somebody when they have 9 kids already, right? It's a hopeful, we're going to make something better than what we had mindset. And that is what we need to bring back and make it better than ever before, beyond what past generations in our country and other places had in that frame of thought. But we've got to deal with coercion. You see, the problem with our world is that coercion holds us back. Coercion retards progress. Okay? So whenever this is kind of one of the hallmark principles of my show that weaves in and out of the stories and the thoughts and the comments that I share with you, which is that coercion, right? And the coercion comes in different ways. At the heart, it's physical coercion, but there's also threats and bullying and peer pressure like we see going on today on so many stories. But coercion kind of is like a negative version of groupthink gone wrong. Now there's self-defense, right? If a society says someone's bombing us or invading our land and they collectively fight to defend their land, that's different. That's a different kind of, that's a defensive force. But when you're using coercion to, pressure people into doing things that they don't feel comfortable doing, what that does is it slows society down, because what happens is you reciprocate an aggressive spirit. You create a reciprocal, distrustful, antisocial spirit, because if you have to coerce someone to do what you want, they will resent you and they will double down in some cases, and they will fight harder, and they might get things wrong in terms of, because you coerced them on this, they're going to disagree with you on something else that you were right about. So that's why it's important to not rely on coercion to affect change in our society. But that's all DC knows. Like I said, whatever field it is, they always tell you this is one thing, it's settled, do not touch it. That's a coercive, bigoted, anti-science approach to realizing, facts and knowledge and learning a discipline. So like I mentioned, Jeff Deist is not with us today because he's with the Mises U event, their Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama. It does a lot with understanding markets and how they work from the Austrian school. But that's a subject. The Austrian school is, basically the group that really makes a great case for understanding free markets and voluntary interactions. I don't think economics is the only perspective you can bring into your understanding of the world, but it's a helpful and necessary part of the equation. And so what I'm suggesting is that all of the problems we have in DC, a lot of it stems from the coercive monopoly funding of government education, both in the primary years as well as college. And they teach one official, basically, range of economic theories, all of which happen to say government is justified to spend whatever money it wants, to print money out of thin air, to create credit, to get people enticed into debt they shouldn't have. All of those different spectrums of established, settled science, so to speak, economic disciplines that are taught in academia and in high school and so forth, are all justifying government coercion. That we have the might, so we have the right to take from you, to tax you, to regulate your business, to protect cronies with regulations so that you can't come into the market and compete with the established players. Again, airlines, pharmaceutical companies, those are examples of that. Food. We think we have a free market. We don't. Well, most people don't think that, but except for people who, again, go to coercive government universities and public school, and they're taught the only time things go wrong is when you had freedom. And so they slander free markets for the sins of DC and crony corporatists. And so that's kind of what is at the heart of the problems that we have today, is that we don't want to talk about how coercion retards information, it retards progress. And it slows our ability to know what we don't know, because when you enclose, a field of thought and say, nope, we've picked a team, this is it, you must take this product, nothing else will get adequate funding or research for this disease, it's just going to be this protocol. That's not scientific. That's a politically coercive, decision. And so that doesn't let you know what you don't know. You're not allowed to look at things outside of Big Pharma's wheelhouse, or look at generic things, or look at diet, nutrition, and different other factors. You can't do that because all the money, all the coercion is tied up together into one revolving door frame, right? So, that leads me to this story in SpectatorWorld.com. It says, when do vaccine incentives become coercive? The technocrats are nudging us into a dystopia. And this is by Laura Dodsworth. It says the vaccine programs launched this year appear to offer a happy ending to the horrible story of the COVID-19 pandemic, but I am cautious, not because I am anti-vax, but because lasting ever afters are never written in the language of emotional manipulation and coercive control. Herd immunity, when enough people have either recovered from COVID or been vaccinated, will end the pandemic. And see, that sentence right there from this author is forbidden in this coercive, drunk time we live in, because they don't even want to talk about the fact that herd immunity includes people who have recovered from COVID, not just the vaccinated. In fact, of course, they've suggested from the establishment government voices that you have to still get vaccinated even though you may have recovered from COVID. That's not enough. This is a coercive, heavy-handed, domineering approach that's not giving a full perspective of the facts. The article goes on to say the pressure to get there has given us a vaccination drive with an unprecedented, strongly behavioral psychology and emergency response approach. A panoply of persuasions has been deployed to encourage the hesitant, the slow, and the complacent. From dating app bonuses to donuts, lotteries to laminated vaccination cards. When do incentives become coercive? Tempting to reward to vaccination include free popsicles, milkshakes, and hot dogs, free Budweiser if 70% of Americans are vaccinated by the 4th of July, free Krispy Kreme donuts every day for a year, but daily donuts seem incongruous with obesity, when obesity is a comorbidity for COVID. And was the person who came up with the idea of offering free joints for jabs actually high? Some of the rewards are substantial. United Airlines is running the Your Shot to Fly sweepstakes, giving away 30 pairs of free flights to vaccinated customers. The state of California's Vax for the Win offers a $116.5 million lottery, is the most generous of multiple cash giveaways in the U.S. There are even scholarships to public universities, and this is where we hit problems. High risk from COVID is both age stratified and associated with identifiable clinical conditions, which means some nuance in who is incentivized and how should be seen as tolerable. Giving homeless people $20 to encourage them when they are at high risk from COVID is acceptable, in my opinion, says Dr. Stefan Baral, a professor of epidemiology at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. But enticing a student with a scholarship scares me the most. Baral would rather see young people turn to pediatricians for individual advice. Yet in Toronto, children as young as 12 have been offered free ice cream for vaccines and do not need parental consent. This is outrageous. A total attack against family to do that, to be able to say, we're going to just cut out the family. So this is not the first time. The NIH, I've mentioned this to you before, just as an example. That the NIH back in the 90s with the AIDS problem was testing experimental, HIV drugs on foster kids without proper parental oversight. So this is the same group, they've been doing this kind of coercive, heavy-handed, might makes right approach, which is just totally incompatible with the Christian society. We don't use violence. You see, and they even try to coat this stuff in Christian language. Oh, don't you care about the poor? Yeah, that's why I tell them to stop eating seed oils. That's why we tell them the things that actually would do way more benefit than just their coercive approach to this particular problem. You see, so they don't want to have an honest conversation guided by ethics and facts. They just want to push coercion and say, that's it, settled. You just shut up. So that's why they're offering free ice cream for vaccines to 12-year-olds. Without parental consent. Baral agrees that this deviates into coercion, particularly as he is not comfortable with emergency use authorization for 12 to 15-year-olds. The risk calculus of the vaccine itself is not yet clear for the young. For example, Israeli data suggests a post-vaccine link with myocarditis, particularly in young men. Should the young be persuaded and bribed to have an intervention which might do them more than good? Again, they don't want you to have this conversation. They don't care about human individual worth. They just care about, we are the rulers of the world. We are gods. Our corporate people matter more than your personal opinion, your personal health. You shut up and you do what you are told. That's their approach. That's the fundamental approach to DC. It's absolutely morally repulsive. They don't show any decent respect for people. And the fact that they're pushing this with kids is where we have to start amplifying our direct rebuke of their nonsense. Okay? We're not going to hold back when they're pushing this for people that can't speak up for themselves. Right? You know, the risk calculus, this says the WHO's Technical Advisory Group on Behavioral Insights and Science for Health is chaired by the celebrated behavioral economist Cass Sunstein, who has suggested overcoming coronavirus vaccine phobia by tackling issues of convenience, complacency, and confidence. Uber and Lyft have offered rides to vaccination centers, which overcomes inconvenience. Targeting complacency is more provocative because this rests upon persuading people that their personal mortality risk from the virus is not low. Well, sometimes the risk is low and the public knows it. The resulting disconnect has been evident at least since an infamous paper advised the UK government that a substantial number of people still do not feel sufficiently personally threatened. It could be that they are reassured by the low death rate in their demographic group and recommended that, quote, the perceived level of personal threat needs to be increased among those who are complacent using hard-hitting emotional messaging. Sunstein suggests offering vivid warnings, including truthful narratives about deaths and serious illness among those who are young, healthy, and tough. But the young, healthy, and tough rarely fall prey to COVID. In a dishonest democratization of risk, politicians, scientists, and media have sometimes overstated its danger. Tactics to breed social conformity range from innocuous, quote, I've been vaccinated, social media stickers and hashtags, to the serious suggestion from the General Secretary of the UK's Association of School and College Leaders that peer pressure should be leveraged to encourage vaccine uptake in high schools. A complete reversal of the usual anti-peer pressure, anti-drug message. Isn't that the truth? Dr. Jackie Cassell of the University of Sussex, a public health specialist and keen vaccine advocate, was disapproving when we spoke. It plays with fire when you use peer pressure in schools. Peer pressure undermines trust in the long term. This could turn people against the vaccine, which with boosters is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Confidence is the thorniest barrier to overcome. Vaccinations have been organized in mosques and cathedrals, and encouraging messages issued from religious leaders. As UK behavioral scientists recommended that using community champions and faith leaders would promote confidence. In an audacious move, Brazil leapfrogged the faith leaders and commissioned God himself to promote the vaccine. The word vaccine saves were projected onto Rio de Janeiro's Christ the Redeemer statue as vaccine acolytes in white t-shirts and face masks raised a single-arm salute underneath. So this is going back to peer pressure, religious, herd conformity, and all of those things, peer pressure, religious conformity, these types of things. When you do this with coercion, it's going to resort to people being sacrificed by unintended consequences. These unintended consequences, oh, we got to push this. And then you got people getting myocarditis, not allowed to talk about that. We stand for every voice. Every person has a right to speak. Every person, if they've been injured or hurt, have a right to speak about what their experience has been. And they don't want that kind of ethical framework to catch on again, I guess, because, it's just my way or the highway. Might makes right. But you know what Jesus says? Jesus says God desires mercy, not sacrifice. Okay? He doesn't say mercy via sacrifice, which is the coercive approach for people who think they're doing something good for humanity by forcing everybody. He says mercy, not sacrifice. And this is something that's totally alien to the DC and crony friends they have. Fear, the article says, has created a morality play where heavy-handed get-the-shot tactics are privileged over the development of long-term trust. While the current pandemic may necessitate a quick-fix approach, the long-term objectives of improving vaccine confidence and overall trust in medical science must not be lost. More threatening still, dehumanizing tactics to deter anti-vax sentiment will divide us. Some will rush, arms outstretched and sleeves rolled up, towards syringes and sweets. Some will hang back, deterred by an eerily hard sell. In the desperate desire to end the horrible story of the COVID pandemic, are we rushing toward a conclusion without being certain of our priorities? That's Laura Dodsworth article in SpectatorWorld.com. So these are real questions, some of which we've been raising a lot, and this is the kind of frame that we need to talk. I mean, I think she was a little bit milder than we've been sometimes, but the point is there are ethical freedoms that we should fight for. we should preserve, we should cherish, we should do so with love, we should do so with tenderness as best as we can, but also when you're hurting people by forcing people into something they don't need necessarily, especially these young kids, that's where we have to not mince words and be a little direct. It's okay to be direct. You know, Jesus called people a brood of vipers when they were leading people into miserable hell on earth because they were lying to people and using might makes right tactics to obscure the truth. We'll take a break and return live on A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski. Stay with us. You can also write a comment on our live stream or call in at 727-587-1040.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania Catania personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman. At the largest volume Ford dealer in the world, your trade is worth more than ever. The used car market is exploding, so every pre-owned vehicle is bringing all the money at Brandon Ford. Here's the perfect scenario. The second truck or third car you don't use much, turn that into cash. SUVs, trucks of all kinds, these are worth gold to you at Brandon Ford. Never before has any dealer been able to offer these insane trade-in values. It's the perfect time to let Brandon Ford take them off your hands, whether you're buying a vehicle from us or not. Brandon Ford will give you all the money for whatever you have, as only the largest volume Ford dealer in the world can. This trade-in event is only for a limited time, so don't wait for the value of your trade to go down. Come on into Brandon Ford, Highway 60 and 301 in Tampa, 24/7 at BrandonFord.com. Never before has any dealer been able to offer these insane trade-in values. If you want to get so much more for your trade, bring it to Brandon Ford today.
If you want to pay less and get a lot for whatever you're trading, come to Brandon Ford.
A Neighbor's Choice is live. I'm David Gronowski, your host. We're live on FM and AM, podcast video stream, and a neighborschoice.com. Always want to make sure you go on there and put your email down to subscribe to our newsletter where you can get all of our content, including our online-only video and podcast content that's not on our daily show that we're doing now. Joseph on our live stream says, let the unvaccinated volunteer to participate in the control group. This would be a peaceful compromise. Another says, Cass Sunstein is a serial nudger. I recall Taleb having a particular disdain for him. I guess you mean that he's always nudging people to, do coercive incentives and behavioral stuff by that term. But I like Taleb. I think he's a pretty brilliant guy. So it's certainly one of those things I'd like to have him on the show sometime. So we've got I want to get to some other stories, but also want to give you some content previews of stuff coming out. We've got a roundtable. We call it the 21st Century Lifestyle Roundtable, and it's with a really all-star cast. We're going to have Joel Salatin, who is the icon of regenerative agriculture and the localist, high quality, back to the roots farming renaissance taking place in America and around the world. Joel Salatin will be joining me in this panel, the 21st Century Lifestyle panel. We're also going to have Dr. Chris Martenson, who, I had an interview with him that got deleted off of the YouTube platform, but it backfired because his show Peak Prosperity published it on their website and put a lot of plugs on it, and we put it on Rumble and things like that, and it got a tremendous, way more exposure than if they had not messed with it. So Dr. Chris Martenson, who's a scientist, will be joining us for this roundtable, and James Dale Davidson, the legendary forecaster and author of books like The Sovereign Individual, where he predicted the rise of cryptocurrency back in like 1998, and is a big hero to a lot of folks in the Silicon Valley digital world and the crypto world. So it'll be an all-star panel there, a farmer, a scientist, and a financial investor. That's an interesting dynamic, but all of them have different kind of forward-thinking approaches to challenging sacred cows and observing the rapid transitions that are taking place between the 20th century of top-down centralized planning and the 21st century, where decentralized information and decentralized networks of knowledge are opening up all kinds of opportunities for growth and healing and wonderful things. So that's something you'll want to look forward to. You'll go to aneighborschoice.com. That'll be an online-only roundtable that'll be coming out very soon. I have a new discussion with Monica Paulus, who is someone who she's from Papua New Guinea. She grew up there, and she was a target of literal witch burning, where in many cases, Papua New Guinea, when times are stressful, when times are a crisis, if someone dies in the village, people get into a blind accusation spirit where they start accusing men or women or even children of being a witch, causing the death, and they then will literally burn the target alive or drown them or torture them or all three. And so I have a very visceral, harrowing discussion with Monica Paulus, who I've had on my show a few years ago. I've kept up with her story, and she's now safe in a new place as a refugee from that horrible experience, but she still is in touch with people, including someone who was a 12-year-old girl who was accused of being a witch. So this deep witch hunting, scapegoat mechanism part of human nature is very much a real part of human history. It's a very essential, unfortunately, part of human history that plays out in different ways. And we need to be mindful of it. We need to be cognizant of it and be thoughtful in the way we understand the psychological and social currents that drive the bad behavior that we do in such a kind of repetitious way. So that's something you're going to want to follow on the podcast, Things Hidden, which you can find at aneighborschoice.com. We'll have another economic discussion looking at anthropology and Rene Girard in relationship to economics and finance with Burke Peters. We brought him on before, and he's come back for another with an article that he's put together that kind of addresses some of the questions we left on the table in our last discussion. That'll also be on our website, aneighborschoice.com. So a lot of things to look forward to, including many other fascinating discussions. How about the inventor of the mRNA technology, Dr. Robert Malone, MD? You'll be hearing from him soon on A Neighbor's Choice. So a lot of exciting stories. I don't want to give all the guests away so far yet, but there's, as you can see, a lot of diverse, influential thought leaders and scientists, people who are doers, not just talkers, people who really put skin in the game. That's what we love. We love to celebrate. People who put skin in the game and people who really take the risk to say what's right and to do what's right, no matter how popular it is. That's what we were all taught as children. I don't care if you're left or right. We were all taught that by our parents and grandparents, and we've lost our way by making excuses about why we, can not do that. So that's the difference between what we see from people really doing stuff and what the DC and media establishment does. I looked at this tweet from Jack Posobiec of Human Events. He says the FBI's Whitmer sting went down in October 2020, but the DOJ said they couldn't investigate Hunter Biden because it might interfere with the election. Are you paying attention yet? So what he's saying is, they've got a double standard. It's about, and we've now known that the Michigan plot had 12 of 18 people involved were FBI informants, had the same pattern of coming into the Michigan Capitol as the DC thing that happened a few months later. And it also had the same guy, I guess, that was overseeing that investigation was transferred to DC right before the January 6th thing that he had to, manage the response to. So it's just interesting to see how these narratives from DC continue to just have such flimsy basis. They wanted us to believe that was an event that told us that 75 million Trump voters were all vicious, hateful people, but we will not stand for that division. We have to unite left and right around personhood, the love of our neighbor. That's what we're for. I'm David Gronowski. Godspeed.